What's up, guys? So today we're going to be starting on this intake swap on the Buick, and of course it's raining, which is awesome, but we've got some cover, so we're okay there. And I've already run into a problem. Let me show you that down here. All I did was barely touch this map sensor this morning to see if it was going to come out, and as you can see, it snapped clean off. So be aware anytime you mess with the intake on one of these. Only on the NA cars, the L67 map is completely different, but these map sensors, these little ones, break super easy. So I don't even know if I would bother trying to get one out. Just buy another one before you even start. But we're gonna have to do that today. But before we do that, I'm gonna go ahead and start taking this apart. So it's pretty straightforward. All you really need to do, first we're gonna get this out of the way. Just pulling the top of this air box and this air tube. Let me make sure I don't lose that. This one is old and hasn't been off in a long time, so. Let's see, we'll just start with the parts over here. Good time to check the air filter. Good God. I guess we're going to be putting an air filter in this one too. Wow, this Buick has really just been in abused truck mode lately, but that's okay. We're going to get all that straightened out. Next, you can go ahead and pull all of these connectors off the throttle body. We will not be using this throttle body in this swap because the adapter for the newer intake manifold won't fit this throttle body, so we have to go to an L67 throttle body. Disconnect this throttle linkage over here. It's going to be kind of hard to show because it's down here under this cover, but I'm going to go ahead and pop this loose to pull that off. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes popping this out makes it easier to take it off of the actual throttle bracket here. But that doesn't necessarily make it easy. And pull it out the side like that, and that's those disconnected. Now this is a California emissions car, so it's got this air tube here that's not normally there. So there's an extra bolt to the throttle body down here that's got to come off. So we'll get that in just a minute too. And it looks like it's for some reason got an extra brace right there too, but that's all right. We'll deal with all that in a minute. We'll get the rest of this off the top first. I pull these lines loose, all the vacuum lines will just come right off. Then we need to come down here. Pry that up so it can release from the bracket. Then the next thing we're going to need to do is get these plug wires that go to the front out of the way. All I'm going to do here is just mark on them where they go. This is number 6. This is number 2, and this is number 4. And we can just pop all those off the coil, which is a little faster and easier than trying to pop it off the spark plugs, and then just feed it back through here and lay it out of the way. This stuff should be good to stay on, so we're not going to try to move that. But you'll need to unplug this purge valve, and then when all this is free, we'll move it out of the way in just a minute. Matter of fact, so these you can pull up on and then just push the little tabs in till they click, and it should let go like that. And you're going to do the same thing back here in the back. Then all these lines can all kind of go back out of the way on their own. You can just sort of tuck them back here or tie them back if you need to. But as long as they're out of the way of the intake manifold, they're fine. So now, let's see what we've got. We're going to need to get this fuel rail out, and this bracket needs to, oh look, it's loose already. Sweet. So we'll take this bracket out to make it a little easier to get the wiring to move, just like that. Then you're going to need to go in here and unplug all these fuel injectors, which usually come off pretty easy. This particular one doesn't seem to want to release. There we go. Sometimes you really have to push that tab to get it to let go. And then you can unplug this, pull it over, give yourself a little extra space. Okay, with all the fuel injector wiring out, you can just kind of pull it back. As you can see, we've had some rodents in here, so I'm going to get the vacuum and vacuum that out in a minute. But first, now some of this is not factory in the back, these vacuum hoses, so it may be different on your car or whatever, but I'll show you basically what we're going to do with that. But here you also see the California emissions stuff. Here's the air injection valve and all that, which we're going to try to just leave alone, not mess with that too much, since it shouldn't be in my way. Pull all these injector harnesses out. This one still has a security tab for some reason I don't understand. I don't know how that one survived, but okay. Then you're going to need to unhook this right here so that the harness can move freely. You're going to need to be able to pull it up like that. That should give you plenty of room to get the intake manifold out. So the next thing that we need to do is get rid of this rodent stuff here. I'll do that off camera, and then well, then we're gonna have to fix this, but that's not a big deal. And then we're gonna pull this fuel rail. Okay, so I cleaned all that out. I went ahead and removed this nut and stud because there's no place for this anyway, and this is gonna hold itself up fine. It doesn't need this anyway. It just comes with it. But so with that out of the way, now we're gonna pull these 10 mil bolts or nuts that hold the fuel rail down. There are 4 of them. Sometimes they'll come out with the stud, sometimes they'll come out like they're supposed to. Let me get around here. Those 4 out, we can work on getting the rail up. Sometimes you get lucky and the rail just pops up. Sometimes the injectors don't want to let go. That side did really good. All right, this particular instance we did good. We'll just pull that out and set it out of the way right now. That gets us down to here. I did break this vacuum tee earlier on accident, but that's not too big of a deal. I've got a lot of vacuum tees, so I should be able to replace that no problem. We'll just keep the pieces. Then you've got this vacuum attachment back here, which I'm going to try to just take the I'm going to take the booster hose off, leave the booster hose in there, and then we'll pull this all together. All right, so next you just got to pull all the little bolts around it that hold it down. keep all these, but I do have another set, but we're going to keep these in case I need them. Then this one down on this end is actually a 10 right here. Then should be another one down here. And possibly one more. Yep, one more 10 I think right here. I think that's all the manifold bolts. If it is, it'll come loose. I think I missed one maybe because it still feels tight. My bad. There's one more that's kind of hard to see right down here beside the alternator button. Just like that. With that out, it's free. So all we've got to do is pull this up and grab this manifold, wiggle it loose, pull it through. The tube fell off. And here you can see part of why people swap to the other manifold is because right where this EGR tube goes through, which you can see right here, this EGR tube will get hot and melt this plastic part of this and actually cause coolant leaks. That's part of the reason why people don't like the aluminum manifold. So we're going to need to remove this too because we're going back with a different setup. Okay, so here we have the manifold that we're using. This is the 04 and up NA 3800 manifold. Now you cannot just slap this on by itself, and I'm sorry for the paint. I didn't paint this and I'm not going to worry about it enough to repaint it either, so that's not important to what we're doing. Couple things that you're going to need to do. One, the evap is usually right here. I threaded that and plugged it, so it's out of the way now. This is the same as what the other manifold is, so that's fine. The bolt pattern is also the same. Where the map sensor sits, which we're going to need a new one of anyway, is the same, so all that'll work. The other thing though is that other throttle body will not work, so we're going to use an L67 throttle body. You can use the L67 to Gen 5 adapter to make that work. Then the only other thing you've got to do is, this is where your positive crankcase ventilation return air comes. This is where air needs to get back in. If you leave it open, it's going to create a vacuum leak. So what I did was, I got this 90-degree hose, ran it down here, drilled a hole right here in this flat piece of the throttle body, and ran a little 90-degree, and that's going to be my return hose. That comes in right on the inside of the throttle body between the mass airflow sensor and the throttle blade, which is exactly where it needs to come from. With that done, this should go in as is. I have the gasket already on it, so we're just going to grab these bolts and we're going to go stick this thing on. Okay, so I went ahead and put the new manifold in. You'll see all the bolt holes line up. So I just used the old bolts and combination of those actually, and the ones from the new manifold. So I've got those in there. I just put the brake booster line back. So the next thing that we're going to do is put this fuel rail back. Should just sit right in here, just exactly the same as it did, because we didn't even change anything with the lower intake manifold. Another thing that's a good idea, wiggle and push your injectors into the holes before you tighten down the bolts, because if you let the nuts pull the injectors in, you're more likely to tear one of the O-rings and have a vacuum leak afterwards. If you've got one that's just really being a pain that doesn't want to go in, lubricate it first and you should be able to get it, but that's a better idea than forcing it. So now we're going to put the hold down nuts in the stud back. Get this wire loom out of my way. These injectors all went back in pretty easy, so we should be good there. You can kind of see here that most of this fits just perfectly. I did use the fuel rail that was already on the car. I didn't swap it out. You will notice this throttle body sits further this way because of this extra length right here in this neck. So we'll have to address that in a minute, but for right now, we're just gonna get everything back together. These don't need to be very tight, just snug them down lightly and they'll be fine. Okay, with those in there, the rail is back. Now we're going to go through, this actually is not in here right, that should be on this side. So we'll just take this, lay it back down in this clip, lay these back down. We'll go ahead and put all the injector wires back first on this front side, then reconnect this on top, which is much better, I think. Just like that. Make sure that that doesn't touch the exhaust down here, because that would be a bad day. Then we'll go ahead and reconnect this main connector right here. This is for the evap solenoid, which we're not going to put back yet, so we'll get it in a minute. Now, one other thing is right here, you've got to pull this back off, just because this really needs to sit under it like that. No big deal there. Now all of this wiring should be able to stretch over here and plug in. The last one of these I did, it did pretty good. It could be a little snug though, but most of that is because of this. You can kind of move that over to that side, that helps. Okay, we'll get the temp sensor when we get that back over here. All right, everything's still looking good over here. This does still have an EGR. This is completely stock setup on this car. So now we're going to rehook these injectors on the back. Just like that. You can reconnect this little wiring holder. And we've got the two vacuum lines that we're going to tee in there. That is partially because this one had to have a vacuum bypass done, so we'll worry about that in a minute. That's not a stock part. Then the next thing we're going to do, actually let's go ahead and fix that. Okay, so we've got this tee back in here, all that's done. Now we're going to bring these fuel lines back, and they should just line right back up, hopefully, and go back where they were. And we're going to need to take this off again. So maybe, I guess the thing to learn there is put this on last. But there, now it's over. Now it should, yep, lines right up with that. I took this bracket off to save space, but you would clip this back into the bracket. Then you're going to flip this back around. You will need to move this down this way just a little bit so that this will still reach, this will reach the L67 vacuum port, which is going to make this a little short. So I'm going to make a little extension here and that should take care of that. All right, now all we're gonna do, because this and this is farther away from each other now, we're just gonna clip that in half like that. Take some rubber hose that's tight to it, feed it across here, just like that. And then we'll just put this in here, clip it to length, and put it over this side. And that should solve that problem nicely. So now everything is rehooked up. Just kind of looking back over everything. So the only thing we have left to do, I've got to get a new map sensor to go here, and we've got to decide what we're going to do about this, because I feel like we're going to have trouble getting the factory piece back in here. So I'm going to see if I can do that. The other thing that we haven't done yet is put these back though, so let me show you that. The good thing about this is that the throttle linkage between the L67 and the existing engine here is exactly the same. So all you have to do is just put it back. It's going to be back a little further than it was, but there's enough play here for it to still work. So that is fine. And cruise will still hook up exactly the same way as well. So that's it, that is done. So now we just have to figure this part out, get a map sensor, and we'll be right back. Okay, so we're all done, put it back together. Let me show you a few things that we did. We did get a new map sensor to replace the one that was broken. This I didn't put back in the bracket, I left it over here to give me some more room over here. It's plugged back in. There's a little extension that we made for the fuel pressure regulator. I extended the wires on the intake temp sensor a little bit, and with that everything seems to fit good. It lines up good. Everything's fine. This is, like I said, L67 throttle body, but everything bolts up good to it. I am going to tighten this up a little bit in a minute, but then the only thing left is to see how it runs, take it out and drive it and see what it feels like. So first impressions after driving it, throttle response is a lot better, which makes sense because the L67 throttle body is bigger. It doesn't have any really appreciable extra horsepower, like peak wise, but it is more responsive. Overall, I think the car feels better. Getting rid of that really dirty air filter probably is part of what made it feel better than it did. But I'm pretty happy with the swap. It wasn't too hard. You could potentially get a factory airbox to still work with this setup. It would just be really tight and really difficult to do. But other than that, I think I've covered about everything. If you guys have any other questions on this swap or how to do it or anything else, let me know down in the comments and I'll be glad to answer them. Drop this video a like if it was helpful, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching, and peace.